Thank you all for being here today. Good morning and good afternoon, since I know we have folks coming in from several different time zones and continents. This is the presentation on the European Research Council grants for top researchers from anywhere in the world. A quick reminder that this webinar will be recorded and shared later, so if you miss any points, you're welcome to check out our video afterwards. We'll be sending you an email tomorrow with a summary. And before we start, I'll also mention that we have reviewed your registration responses to get an idea for what the audience demographics are, and we'll keep that in mind during today's presentations, just to try to tailor this as much as possible to you and your needs. And to get a sense for the attendees here today, since not everyone that registers is always able to join, I'm going to just jump into a few quick poll questions, and I'll be sharing those responses with everyone as well. So bear with me here. So first and foremost, I'd just like to ask how familiar you are with ERC grants. We know we have a lot of folks coming in here who are familiar with these, are just coming here as a primer. Maybe they want to have ideas on what might be new for next year's call, or hear statistics about the 2020 call, which recently ended for every single type of different grant. So we'll be going over that. But just to have an idea, we tried to ask not too many questions in the registration page. So it seems like very few people are highly familiar or very familiar. So I'm not sure how we'll be able to wrap up the webinar in an hour, or just over an hour, and hopefully you'll feel closer to very. But in this case, this is a great base so that we'll be able to really teach you a bit more. We're really lucky to have our two ERC speakers with us today. So I'll jump right into the next question. And that is, now that the 2020 calls have closed, are you planning on applying for a grant next year? We don't have specific dates to announce just yet. Okay, there we go. About half of you are considering it, which I think is a great stage to be in terms of attending this webinar. This webinar is also ERC grants. I'll jump into another portion. We have a speaker who later this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, who will address implementing arrangements. So we're just curious if you've heard of them. Okay, 4 out of 5 of you have not heard on average. Okay. And then finally, and this ties in slightly to the internet implementation arrangements question. Do you know an ERC grantee that you'd like to collaborate with? In terms of any partnerships here, if you do have someone in mind. Okay, so sharing the results, about 3 out of 4 do not have an ERC grantee in mind, which is completely fine. So thank you so much. With those 4 poll questions, I think we have a better idea of who's with us today. I hope everyone can see and hear us all right. I don't see any questions that have been submitted saying there's any technical issues. So I look forward to just moving forward with this. We will answer audience questions at the end of everyone's presentation. So instead of doing it after each speaker, we'll just hold off until the end. So I'll ask you to do 2 things just to help keep the Q&A smooth. The first is let us know who your question's for, just by stating that person's name or who it's addressed to. With the 2 speakers from the ERC, there might be one who's better positioned to answer your question. Just make sure that he addresses your question. Just drop his name in as you're submitting that via the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. And the second is to simply wait till the end of each speaker's presentation before writing a question for him. So, for example, our first speaker will be presenting the bulk of our presentations today. And when he's in his final few minutes, please feel free to start dropping the questions in there so that he can review them as the following speakers go. Because we all build our presentations to try to cover the most frequently asked questions. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Frank Kuhn, who is a research evaluation panel coordinator at the European Research Council Executive Agency. Dr. Kuhn, good afternoon to you in Brussels, and thanks very much for speaking today on ERC grants. Please take it away, and I'll just make sure your screen sharing is working. And once it is, I'll take myself off my webcam here and give you the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Jackson. Thanks for the nice introduction, and also for this opportunity to speak here a little bit about ERC funding opportunities. It's really great for us, so thanks to you and all the EURAXESS team. We greatly appreciate that opportunity. Now, let me share my screen first and foremost, and then we see whether all the technical aspects are working. Let's see this. So I'm sharing my screen, show the screen, and then we go to preview.
Great.
How did it look, Jackson? Is that okay?
Everything looks great.
Okay. So I move my cursor to the right here, and then we're ready to go. So
great, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackson. The title of my talk is ERC Grants for Top Researchers from Anywhere in the World. And what I hope to do in about 20 to 25 minutes, I hope I get through those slides. I hope to give you a first overview what it is the ERC has to offer, how you could potentially benefit from these funding opportunities. And when designing my presentation, I thought, why don't we just dive in with the key message that my presentation has. We come back to this key message later on. I will conclude with it, and we can talk in detail then about the different aspects of it. So now it's of course the case that I can't switch slides. Now it works. Wonderful. So the key message here that I have for you today is that ERC grants offer a highly flexible funding opportunity to top researchers with or without a team to realize their most ambitious scientific project. So you have to be a top researcher, you have to be a very good researcher in your field. And what ERC is looking for is a very ambitious project. Submit your best scientific idea. This is what we're looking for. Here, and we of course speak to a North American audience. Europe is potentially removed a bit. You ask yourself, can I really participate? Can I apply? And the answer is yes. You can apply at any age, irrespective of your nationality or your current place of residence or even your topic of research. All are welcome. As it's stated in the first sentence, it's highly flexible, and it is simply a great opportunity. It's project up to 5 years, so you don't have to go for 5 years, but the usual duration is 4 to 5 years. The funding amounts are substantial, and we're going to come back to this, and it offers great independence. And this is particularly important for young researchers looking to, make a name for themselves and move further in their career. So our starting grants are a wonderful tool for this, and we're going to talk about it. So the key message is highly flexible, open to almost anyone. So the next question then is really, what do I need to apply then if it's so flexible? What you do need to participate in ERC grants is a PhD certificate. So you have to have a doctorate that is older than 2 years. That is basically the entry qualification. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need a so-called host institution letter. That is a letter from a scientific institution, public or private, that is situated, that resides in an EU country, a country that belongs to the European Union, or an associated country. If you don't know for example, the associated countries, not everyone has them in mind, countries that are associated to the EU program, you can go to the ERC website. We will have a slide at the end where you can basically go through the list and see which countries are eligible for this as an associated country. The other thing that you need to do, and we're going to talk about this for a while, you need to spend 50% of the time at this host institution. Now, that sounds a lot initially if you're currently in the US or in Canada, but fear not, this is cumulatively over the grant duration. So that doesn't mean you have to be 50% all the time in Europe at this European host institution, but seen over the grant duration. So for example, over 5 years, right? So that could mean very practically that in the beginning, you would spend more time, let's say in Europe, setting up your project, etc. In between, you spend less time, less than these 50% of your time, rekindling the links with your US host institution, with your Canadian host institution. And then you come back later, perhaps when it's about dissemination, about getting results done, come back to Europe a bit more often. So it's flexible also from the time that you have to spend and when you spend it. You can really design it so it makes sense for you. And finally, and importantly, of course, you have to have a very ambitious scientific idea. You have to have a great idea, submit your best idea, I said it at the beginning, and you should have a scientific track record that convinces our evaluation panels that you are able to basically implement this idea, to put it into practice. So you need a PhD, a host institution letter, 50% of time spent in the EU or associated countries, and you have to have a great idea. So that's what you need to apply. And thirdly, before we can go into the depths of it all, I thought to highlight in this slide the particular incentives that researchers that are not from the ERA, the European Research Area, which is EU countries and associated countries, these researchers, that because you get extra benefits. And one of the benefits that stands out is that you can actually apply for 1 million euros extra funding on top of the normal funding if you move from a country beyond Europe to a European Union country or associated country. So that's 1 million euros. That's a substantial amount of money that you are eligible if you come to Europe. Eligible for if you come to Europe. Indeed. As I said in the previous slide, as a grantee, you can keep your affiliation. Probably we can talk about it more a bit in the Q&A, but you can work out sort of an agreement with your current host institution that you don't have to leave them. We realize, of course, that links are important. So there is a possibility, and ERC tries to be as flexible as possible in that regard. Another advantage is that team members can be based outside of Europe. This is quite flexible. You can have teams all over, and you just need a host institution letter also for them to formalize this. But that's a problem. That's no problem. Finally, this is true for all of our grants. ERC grants are fully portable within Europe. So if you find that you find better, research opportunities at another host institution, at another university in Europe or an associated country, you're fully free to take your grant and move your team, if you have one, to that area. So these were the incentives. Let me now get into the meat of my presentation. Also see a little bit here how we're doing for time. Yeah, 3 parts essentially. Now you have the main message, the key information is already there. And in these 3 parts that I'm going to sketch out now, we're going to come to these, we're going to come back to these points and hopefully explain them a little bit more. So the first part is, what is ERC? The European Research Council, what is it, the people behind it? Second part is, how does ERC evaluate proposals? So if you submit a proposal, what kind of scrutiny does that proposal get? And thirdly, if you want to participate from North America, from beyond Europe, how have participants, a little bit of statistics, how have participants done in the past, and a few tips, and hopefully hands-on advice on how to get started. So what is ERC? The European Research Council is a part of the European Commission, as such specifically the Directorate General for Research in Innovation. So it is a funding body that was implemented by the European Commission. And as you can see here in this next slide, it constitutes a part of the European funding program for research. The current one is called Horizon 2020. So this is the 7-year program that the European Union sets up and out to implement their research funding. So it's a 7-year plan that has allocated funding, and that consists of different parts. And one of the parts, as you can see in the slide, is the European Research Council. Our budget is about 17% of Horizon 2020, which is 13 billion euros. So you can see the funding is quite substantial, and we constitute a good part of what is the EU funding program. So we have this webinar at an interesting time because we are between funding programs. So we are currently at the intersection in 2020, and in 2021 we will have a new 7-year plan, which is then entitled Horizon Europe. So we will be talking about Horizon Europe and the opportunities for you to participate in Horizon Europe under the ERC program. So one part is the funding, but then it's of course also people, and that's very important at the ERC. And the people component is twofold. First of all, the Scientific Council. You can see their pictures here in front of you. Eminent scientists who are in charge of the scientific direction that the ERC is moving into. There are Nobel Prize winners among them, and if you would like to think of the ERC as an organization from scientists for scientists, that's surely also a good way of thinking about the European Research Council. So here, the members of the Scientific Council, and they basically give the guidance on where we steer. The implementation of this direction given by the Scientific Council is handled by the ERCEA, so the European Research Council Executive Agency. And the people that you see in the picture here is the management. These are my colleagues, the management team at ERC, and they represent about 500 colleagues of mine, and we are located in Brussels, and our job is to implement the funding of ERC, the ERC program, and that includes scientific evaluation, finance aspects, monitoring. So this is what we do here in Brussels at the agency, and as was said by Jackson before, I'm part of the scientific department in charge of evaluation of scientific grants. Right, and moving on. So ERC in a nutshell, a little bit of a summary here. The grants are for individual researchers. They can come from all over the world. They are long-term grants, so up to 5 years. And here a few terms that might be a little bit unusual for you. High risk, high gain, pioneering projects is what we're looking for. So high risk, high gain, that means you have to have this ambition that I mentioned in the beginning. Pioneering, basically also trying something new. Don't submit an incremental project, a little tweak on what you have been doing the last 5 years. No, please submit a very good idea, the brightest idea that you have, please submit it. You can do this on any topic. There are no priorities whatsoever. We cover all the fields of science, and we divide them into 3 domains: life sciences, physical science and engineering, as well as social sciences and humanities. And I myself, I'm a political scientist by training, and I run the evaluation panel on political science and law and geography as well in this year. So you can see as a summary here in the summary slide what ERC is all about. So how do we do it? It's always very simple to explain what ERC does, because we have essentially one grant scheme that extends over the let's say academic life cycle. So we start with the starting grant. It's a size of up to 1.5 million with the additional 1 million euros, duration up to 5 years, and you can start applying, as I said, 2 years after PhD until 7 years after PhD. So the only age we count is sort of an academic age, if you want to put it like this. So for all the grants, the starting, consolidator, and advanced grants, the same principles apply. It's always about scientific quality. Of course, it's commensurate with academic seniority. We don't expect the track record of senior scientists from a person who has just gotten their PhD 3 years ago. That's very clear. Our panels understand that, and we're going to come back to this. So consolidated grant, that's 7 to 12 years after PhD. Of course, the money is a bit more, 2 million and up to 1 million top-up funding. Duration up to 5 years, that's always the same. And what we expect is just a little bit more in terms of track record, in terms of scientific production, and we can discuss it. It takes various forms. It can be quite different. For the advanced grants, the size is one up, 2.5 million plus 1 million. And here, this is really 12 years after PhD plus. So we really expect applications from leaders in the field. So what's measured then is the scientific track record and achievements of the past 10 years. So these are the grants. Again, they're pretty much, and we're going to come to it, they're pretty much according to the same principle, scientific quality only or excellence only, if you want to use that term. And it's sort of develops over the expectations increase with academic age, as you may expect. Moving on, I mentioned ERC panels, evaluation panels. In 2021, we will have 27 panels in the 3 domains, and you see here the ones in red, SH7 and PE11. These are new panels. Because the ERC is in the fortunate position that you know, that there are many applications. We're very popular, which we find of course very good. But we had to add, or the scientific council who decides such matters had to add additional panels in order to be able to deal in a appropriate way with the proposals that we receive. So 3 domains: life sciences, social sciences, humanities, physics, and engineering, and 27 panels. And all of this evaluation is operated by the scientific department B, which again, I'm a part of. Now, we have 2 other ERC funding schemes that are more recent. One is the Synergy Grant. It's when all the other grants are for individual researchers plus team, or you don't have to have a team. The Synergy Grant should be composed of 2 to 4 researchers and their research groups. And the interesting bit for you here is that in Synergy Grant, 1 researcher can be based outside the EU or associated countries. So that means in the US, in Canada, all over the world. So that's an option. There is no age specificity in terms of applicant profile, but largely what we see with the applications is that applicants do have an advanced grant profile. Really senior people apply for these things. So just to give you a bit of an indication in that direction. So Synergy Grant, 2 to 4 collaborators on this one. Proof of concept is only eligible for researchers who already have an ERC grant or ERC grantees. Size of the grant is 150,000 euros and the duration is up to 18 months. And the idea behind it is to have a bit of a bridge between the frontier research that they do in their main project and to utilize, to valorize some of the ideas that come out of this grant and to further develop them. This could be anything. This could be a business plan. This could be a type of social innovation. This could be a tool, software tool, you name it. That's the possibility for grantees to develop their ideas a bit further and to make a proof of concept, hence the name. Facts and figures. ERC was established in 2007. And we have now funded more than 10,500 projects of all types, 82 nationalities, 34 EU and associated countries hosting ERC projects. You see the numbers there. It's quite impressive. The prices, the publications, it's really a tremendous production, I would say. And what's also not to be underestimated is how many researchers reside in ERC teams. And I think we might hear from Davide with the implementing arrangements later on, what kind of potential is in there to get into an ERC team, perhaps even before you apply for your own grant. So that brings us to the second part, where we zoom in on how ERC does evaluation of proposals, of submitted proposals. So it's a two-step process. However, it's one individual submission. So you submit one document, and that is then assessed over the life course of this evaluation. First, it starts with written reviews submitted by these panel members. So we talked about the 27 panel members. You choose to which panel you want to submit your proposal. And in these panels, there are about 10 to 16, it varies, experts from around the world appointed by the scientific council. So again, this is not done by the agency, but by scientists. They appoint panel members, scientists that are suitable to assess this science. So these panel members will provide written reviews, usually 4 per proposal, and they will discuss them together at the panel meeting. Currently, of course, all virtual because of the current situation. So this step 1 meeting is really a sifting meeting, and they only look at part B1, which is sort of the short synopsis of your application. It's only 5 pages, and I can tell you already that this is a major challenge to bring your idea across in all, you know, as in such a short form, but still be comprehensive to demonstrate feasibility and soundness of your idea. So if you master basically step 1 and you're invited to step 2, then another remote assessment follows, again by panel members, but also by experts that the panel members assign. We call them remote reviewers, but this time they look also at part B2, which is the full proposal. So following these reviews, so it will be 4 panel members and usually 2 to 3 external reviews, another panel meeting takes place. And in these panel meetings from 2021 onwards, there are always interviews. So it used to be only starting and consolidated grantees who needed to, or applicants who needed to do an interview in Brussels in person. But now it's also for the advanced grant. So everyone has to do an interview, and following that interview, the panel decides who gets funded and which proposals do get rejected. And then it's the feedback to applicants. I mentioned it before. It's all about quality. Excellence is the sole evaluation criterion. If you don't like the term excellence, think of scientific quality. The ERC is all about scientific quality. That extends to 2 parts. One is the excellence of the research project, and the other is the quality of the principal investigator. And you see on the slide that this breaks down into 3 points each. So for the research project, what the panels want to see is a groundbreaking idea, a really new idea. So don't propose something small scale that is sort of incremental. Please propose a big idea. They want to assess the potential impact. And when we talk about impact in ERC terms, it's always scientific impact. It's not social or policy relevance, social impact, as important as this is. This is not the main criterion. It's of course welcome if ERC grants have a social impact as well, but it's not needed. So that's what they're looking for. And then how do you propose to do this? What are your methods? How do you go about implementing this idea? Then the principal investigator is basically just to tell the audience, okay, to tell the panel, convey in a convincing manner that you're actually able to pull off your great idea, that you have some experience, publications, whatever counts in your respective field of study as an achievement, that you bring these to the fore, and that the panel has confidence that you can bring the project to a successful end. I'm quickly showing you the call calendar for 2021. It's an expected timing because the work program has not been released because we're still waiting for the EU budget to be finalized. So this is in process, but that gives you a rough idea, and you can always come back to this. And of course, the ERC website has always the latest information. Now, some rumors and about the evaluation and what ERC is all about quickly, because I'm mindful of time. You can only apply for an ERC grant if you are a highly accomplished scientist. As I said before, that's not true. Our panels, of course, take seniority into account. Rumor 2, to be successful, you need to continue on an established research line to prove continuity and credibility. Generally, the opposite is true. If you have a new way that you want to go and a new direction that you want to follow, ERC is surely the address where you want to apply. Rumor 3, if you have already obtained an ERC grant, you are less or more likely to get another one. That's also incorrect. We advise our panels, and the data success rate basically attests to that, every proposal in every call in every panel should be treated the same way, irrespective of whether the applicants had a previous ERC grant or not. Rumor 4, the more socially or medically relevant a grant proposal is, the higher the chances of it getting funded. I said it before, it's really about scientific impact and not necessarily social impact. We have more ideas about ERC that are around and not necessarily true. We have this idea about frontier research, and what it means is simply to push the frontier of knowledge. And that can be, of course, done in applied research as well as in basic research. So frontier research, in some sense, is also the idea of doing away with that distinction, applied versus basic research. So ERC is frontier research. The budget is distributed among the scientific panels as a function of demand. So every panel gets the amount, the budget amount, commensurate with the number of submitted proposals, so that every proposal has the same chance of success. The panel descriptors, so these are basically the keywords that are in the ERC work program to basically give you a better idea on where to apply, to which panel. They do not represent any priorities. Also, our success rate is virtually flat across the eligibility window, starting and consolidated grant. And publication record is not the one and only important. Of course, it's important and relevant in many areas, but it's not decisive in selection decisions. The other means of scientific production are equally respected, and you will know what is relevant in your area. Finally, the host institution is not an evaluation criterion. So there you go. This basically sums up the part on how the evaluation works, and we can come back to it. I'm going to round up the discussion or my presentation with a few numbers on participation from beyond Europe and give you a few examples on participants from North America and a few tips. There we go. We have 45 non-EU or associated country nationalities that are currently principal investigators of an ERC grant. And you can see that among these PIs, as we call them, principal investigators, quite a number in the US and in Canada. Here we're looking at the, not at grantees, but at the number of evaluated proposals provided or submitted by EU, non-EU associated country nationals, so researchers from beyond Europe for the years 2014 to 2019. And you can see it's reflected, US, Canada are really up there in the participation, which is great. But could always be more, of course, the same for the principal investigators. What we do see is an increased participation in starting and consolidated grants of non-EU AC nationals by call year. So here you see the development really on the left for starting and consolidator from 2007 to 2019. So we're really up from under 6% to over 11%. So that's positive, more of a mixed development in the advanced grants. Here, this table shows you the grantees outside the EU and associated country at the time of application. So this is divided up in international grantees, so non-EU AC nationals who were outside of Europe, and EU AC nationals who were outside of Europe and came back and got an ERC grant. You can also see a similar distribution as we saw among grantees for the teams. We have over 10,000 non-ERA team members in our grants, and most of them come from China, US, India, and Russia. One concrete example, just sort of to give you a face also, just one example of the many excellent researchers from beyond Europe, and in this case from North America. This is Philip Howard. He's currently at the University of Oxford in the UK. And this current project is that he has here is called Bot Find. And it's about finding bots, detecting harassing automation, and restoring trust in social media civic engagement. A topic that is extremely hot, and I mentioned the proof of concepts earlier. This is basically offspring from his standard ERC grant. He won a consolidated grant in 2014, which is about computational propaganda. And this basically is a wonderful example, actually, how forward-looking ERC grants can be and how our panels look for new ideas. Because in 2014, nobody knew about Twitter bots. The 2016 US election hasn't happened where these Twitter bots were for the first time used by both parties to an increased extent. The term fake news hadn't even existed. So you see that innovation and new ideas are crucial in being successful at ERC. I want to close with a slide that basically gives you a hands-on piece of advice how to get started. 3 points only. Please calibrate yourself. Go to the ERC website, compare yourself against current grant holders, look at their CVs, look at their projects. At the ERC website, there's a section called Projects, Facts and Figures. Please go there, have a look. You can find all the projects we ever funded with description, etc. So this is a great way of basically getting a bit of a feeling for how you would fare amongst the competition. So that's the first point. The second point is I would advise you to reach out to scientific institutions in the EU and associated countries, and/or according to your preference, just see where you want to go. Many of them have EU funding offices, and they're great first contact points to get in touch and ask them about the possibilities, about present ERC grants at their institution. And finally, call the national contact point in this country. They can give you additional information. And of course, EURAXESS, once you're ready to go, or even before, we'll hear from Jackson, I'm sure, later on, what EURAXESS can do to facilitate your journey, hopefully to a EU host institution. I'm going to repeat my key message from the beginning. The major takeaway that I would like to relay here: ERC grants offer highly flexible funding to top researchers. You can have a team, but you don't need to have one. Please submit your best ambitious scientific project. Age, nationality, current place of residence are not relevant. Neither is your topic of research. All you need is a PhD, the willingness to go to Europe for a certain time, and a host institution support letter. I leave you with the slide on where you can find more information. Really, the ERC website is such a treasure trove for information in this regard. National contact points I mentioned, and there is this overall platform funding and tender opportunities of the European Commission. Last but not least, please go to our social media channels. We have excellent videos that in 5 minutes basically summarize what ERC is all about. With that, I will conclude, and thank you for the attention. Jackson, I hand over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. Let me see here. I'm going to be sharing the screen with our next speaker. So to complement Frank's presentation on ERC grants, I'd like to invite Dr. Davide Innocenti to introduce the implementing arrangements. Dr. Innocenti is also a scientific officer at the European Research Council Executive Agency, and he works in the call and project follow-up coordination unit. So Davide, bear with me for one moment while I make sure that you are sharing your screen, and then from there, I'll let you take it away.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackson. I'd like also to thank EURAXESS for giving us the opportunity to advertise implementing arrangements. Well, more than 20% of you never heard about implementing arrangements, but almost 1/3 of you already know an ERC grantee you would like to collaborate with. Well, you are in the right place, since I'm going to present you an opportunity to join an ERC team. Implementing arrangements are actually international agreements, fostering opportunity for scientists to visit and collaborate with an ERC scientist, an ERC grantee, partially supported by foreign agencies. As you can see in the map, there are already 14 implementing arrangements signed with agencies from 12 different countries across the world. And more than 400 researchers already visited an ERC since 2012. Our next call, internal call for expression of interest toward ERC grantees, will be launched in November 2020. But I will come back to that later on. So we already noticed from the map that we signed an implementing arrangement with the US. Indeed, this was the first one in 2012. ERC signed an agreement with the National Science Foundation. And we also have another one with Canada. Indeed, we signed in 2012 an agreement with the Canadian Agency, Institutional Programs Secretariat, the TIPS. What about the participation? ERC grantees, a lot of ERC grantees already expressed their interest to host researchers from foreign countries. As you can see from 2012, a lot of researchers were interested to host researchers from US. But as well, Canada is doing pretty well in the last year, since 2012, when joined the program. I want to also show the numbers relative to the visits that actually have been realized in the last years. Despite the big success in terms of numbers, you can see that for ERC grantees wanted to host, you can see that the number of visitors are not pretty high for the moment. But this means that you have a lot of opportunities. More than 600 ERC grantees are really a big pool of projects you can actually join. Indeed, if you are a Canada Researcher Holders or a Bunting Postdoctoral Fellows, this is a great opportunity for you, as well as you are a scientist or an engineer awarded by NSF. As you can see for 2019 call, there are still no a lot of data regarding visitors because of COVID pandemic crisis, of course. This doesn't mean that the program is not proceeding, but is just freezed. Some of the foreign agencies actually postponed the call. Some others actually just frozen the visits. So it will probably start to be effective when we will come back to a new normality. I will quickly explain you how does it work. Basically, we will launch a call for expression of interest in November. We will contact thousands of ERC grantees. Eligible grantees means that they still have 18 months to go by the end of their project. They will have a month to express their interest to host scientists supported by national funding agencies. After that, we will send a list of these interested ERC grantees to all the national based funding agencies across the world, so also to NSF and TIPS. At that point, they will launch their internal call. They will send you a Dear Colleague letters if you are eligible, and they will share with you the list of ERC grantees. At that point, you will have also a book of abstract. You can read about a project that you don't know. It's good if you already know an ERC grantees you want to work with, and you will see that it's there in the list. But you will have also the chance to read about new projects you don't know. And it will be up to you to contact the PI, the ERC grantee, and to seek an agreement for a possible visit. If you find an agreement with the ERC grantee, it will have actually to provide you a letter of support together with a letter of support of the host institution where it's working. Then it will be in the end of the National Basin Funding Agency, the NSF or the TIPS, to evaluate all the proposals and to fund the successful one. At that point, if you are a successful candidate for visiting fellowship, for implementing an arrangement, then you will have to plan and execute the visit in agreement with the ERC grantee. Very briefly, there are some processes and conditions which are common to all the agreements. I'm not going into the detail, but just the most important one. Indeed, the ERC does not intervene in the communication between you, potential visitors, and the ERC grantees. It's up to you to do that. The selection of the visiting scientists, as I already told you, will be done only by the non-European funding agency without our intervention at all, okay? The visit, of course, have to take place within the lifetime of the ERC project because since it's partially funded by the ERC grants, it has to cover for eventual costs. Of course, it is expected that collaboration will occur in the same areas of scientific interest. And you have to know that you may be incorporated in the search team of the ERC grantees for all the duration of the visit. The visits can last up to 12 months with a minimum of 2 months for an NSF and a minimum of 3 months for the TIPS. You can also do multiple short-term visits, summing up to this minimum. So I will leave you with this page regarding where you can find more information. Indeed, we have our webpage with additional opportunities. There you can find all the implementing arrangements and a summary of the information I provide you. You will also find the original documents regarding the implementing arrangement with Canada and US. I want to underline the fact that we will launch our internal call in November, and probably in early 2021, you will hear about that from your national funding agency through a Dear Colleague letter. I would like to share with you also our functional mailbox, ERC implementing arrangements. Please do not hesitate to contact us. I am the person behind this functional mailbox together some of my colleagues. So you already know my name and my face. Please do not hesitate to contact me. Thanks a lot for your attention. I will leave you to I will leave that to Jackson.
Great. Thank you so much, Davide. I'll take over and share my screen in just a moment. Before I do transition to the brief EURAXESS presentation, I want to quickly jump to comments that I think you've touched on, that Frank also mentioned earlier. In Frank's closing remarks, he said, calibrate yourself. So I just want to underscore the usefulness of the application and project statistics that you both shared. One thing that comes to mind, because my colleague and I promote all of the European funding opportunities and initiatives heavily as part of our daily routine and our job, is the subtle difference between nationality and country of residence during time of application. And I know when Frank suggested calibrating yourself and sort of comparing yourself to past applicants and grantees to understand how you might fit in and what insights you can glean from that, it can be useful just to keep the difference in mind. And all the graphs and statistics are always clearly labeled, but it can be very simple to sort of let that subtle difference go over your head. So for example, in the registration page for today's webinar, I asked for your country of residence, but not your nationality, just so we could have an idea which current universities or organizations or institutions you might be affiliated with by country. So do keep in mind that difference. So with that, thank you very much. I will share my screen here. Okay, we'll jump right into that in a second. So I think it's safe to say that this webinar is on ERC grants, but that if you're here, you're interested in funding opportunities generally, and all of the tools of the European Commission that the Commission offers to promote Europe as a research and living destination. So I will present on EURAXESS services. I'll keep it somewhat short just so that we can jump to the Q&A with Frank and Davide. My name is Jackson Howard, and I am the regional representative for EURAXESS North America, covering the US and Canada with my colleague, Dr. Daria Buyuktaner-Karajan. She and I are here to promote research opportunities to researchers of all nationalities in all fields and at any stage in their research careers. So quite similar to the ERC grants and the wide open availability and requirements that Frank mentioned. And so because we are always here to address your questions and connect you to your EURAXESS services, you always have the opportunity to find out about what we do and ask us inquiries and send us questions. So again, my presentation will be more on the Express side, allowing us to jump right into the Q&A with Dr. Kuhn and Dr. Innocenti. So here is EURAXESS in a nutshell. So again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. EURAXESS Researchers in Motion is the overall initiative or project under which EURAXESS North America and all of the EURAXESS services exist. So as a brief overview, you have this overarching initiative, which is called EURAXESS Researchers in Motion. And then you have the hubs outside of Europe. So currently there's 8 of us, there's 8 hubs. Some of them are country specific, some of them focus more on a region or a continent. So this webinar is being organized and hosted by us here in EURAXESS North America. I'll explain the services that all of the EURAXESS hubs offer shortly. So in terms of the overall project, EURAXESS Researchers in Motion is a unique pan-European initiative of the European Research Area, or ERA. As Frank mentioned, ERA is the unified research area of the EU member states and associated countries, which create a single borderless market for research, innovation, and technology across the EU and across Europe. So this therefore enables the free circulation of researchers, scientific knowledge, and technology. One of the many tools to help achieve this goal is the EURAXESS Researchers in Motion project, which is backed by the European Union and its member states and associated countries. So the overall aim of EURAXESS is to support researcher mobility and career development while enhancing scientific collaboration between Europe and the world. So I would say if you do not have any interest in carrying out research in Europe, EURAXESS can still be quite useful to you in the sense of partnering you with European institutions or European researchers, regardless of where you live, where you're from. Really, the idea is to connect great research minds here. And a friendly reminder that all of our services are free of charge. So whenever you see us promoting a webinar or an activity that we're leading, really this is open to you. Membership tends to be just signing up for our mailing list, and that way we know you're interested and engaged. And you can unsubscribe anytime. So please do. At the end of this, we'll send you a follow-up email tomorrow. Please do sign up for our mailing list if you're not already on it. So I'll give a very brief overview as to what we do, and what you see here, these 4 categories, more or less mirror the EURAXESS website itself. So there's 4 central components to our services. The first is our EURAXESS portal has a jobs and funding database. This is where researchers are invited to search for job vacancies and funding opportunities. And research institutions / universities / companies are also invited to publish their job vacancies. Any institution that receives commission funding by contractual agreements and the way these framework programs are structured are required to also post them on the portal. So I would say the portal, I can safely say the portal represents a one-stop shop to finding opportunities across Europe. Registered users are able to search for both individuals and then research organizations and businesses to look for partners. So that's our partnering tool, as well as our hosting tool. So there's a database where research institutions are invited to publish their hosting offers. They do this frequently because oftentimes they want to receive you for your research project because they know you're going to be getting funding from an existing commission initiative, like an ERC grant or a Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Fellowship. And they will also get some form of compensation in that as well. So it's really a win-win-win for all parties involved. So you might not have to dig as hard as you think to find universities or institutions that want to host you. So I would encourage you to go to the jobs and funding section, look for hosting partners, and then also the interactive partnering tool itself. In terms of career development, EURAXESS will support you throughout the process, whether it's engaging with academia, industry, with the help of our career development centers throughout Europe. And your local hub will have useful information, training resources, and more. When I say local hub, there's two ways to think of this. The hubs outside of Europe. So I say this to our audience here. I think most people in attendance today are researchers of many nationalities, but living in the US or Canada. And if you happen to know which country to Europe you'd like to carry out your research in and move to, there are also EURAXESS service centers and offices within each country. So they'll have specific information on the logistics of moving to that country, how the tax system works in that country. I'll get more into that, but that's a brief introduction. And then in terms of information and assistance, what I was just describing are the 41 national portals. So they'll provide information on research jobs and funding opportunities, and then offer personalized services to that country. The information that we give you is the 8 EURAXESS worldwide hubs outside of Europe. Will not be so country specific. We'll oftentimes get you in touch with the right point of contact in Europe, depending on the funding mechanism you're interested in or the institution. But in this case, and offer training services. But in this case, when you have a country-specific question, we sort of have counterparts or colleagues who are really happy to help you with that when you have that country in mind. And this is always divided into 18 categories, 18 different topics and 3 categories. So the national centers, the national portals, they're experts on accommodation, visas and banking, social security. Those make up some of the 18 topics, which you'll see in a future slide. And then all of this, they categorize under 3 categories: living in Europe, which includes moving to Europe if you're not already in Europe, or moving from one European country to the other if you already are there, working in Europe, and then finally leaving Europe if at some point your project ends or you'd like to move back to where you came from or continue elsewhere. So your gateway to all of these services is through the hubs, which I've been mentioning, which are under EURAXESS Worldwide. We are one of those 8 hubs. So we serve as a networking tool to support researchers working outside of Europe who wish to connect with or stay connected to Europe. Again, regardless of your nationality, you can find out more about European research policy, funding, and further collaboration opportunities. So I'm the regional representative for the North America Hub. Our office, again, promotes ERA, the European Research Area, here in the US and Canada, to researchers of all nationalities in all fields and any stage of their research career. And then finally, we also act as a platform for the European scientific diasporas. So these are the national networks of researchers and scholars in North America who provide providing information of specific relevance to each of those countries. And these European scientists are a great resource for their home country, as well as for locally based researchers, as well as their adopted country here in the US or Canada. So here's a quick screenshot of the homepage. I'll continue explaining briefly what we offer with the dual aim of just giving you an overview of the EURAXESS web portal so that you'll be able to navigate it on your own. And then I'll briefly just give a plug that we're always happy to provide sort of custom training opportunities to you and your groups or your university or your institution. So if you really are curious about EURAXESS services and you want us to do a deeper dive, please just send us an email. The functional mailbox of our office to reach both of us here will be in the final slides, and we're always open. We want to hear what your needs are, so that we can build informational tools that we'll end up sharing with everyone, but tailoring to you. So this is what the main EURAXESS website looks like. This isn't any specific hub. If you go to EURAXESS.org, it'll forward you to the longer European Commission official website, and basically you can put what are you and what are you looking for, and it'll automatically jump you to that section. But if you look here, you'll see several different sections, several different tabs up top. I'll quickly go over each one. So first and foremost, what's new? In recent years, the website's been revamped and we added entrepreneurs and businesses as target groups. So because EURAXESS is a global network of researchers in all disciplines, and in particular, there's a lot of early career researchers. This is a great way to connect regardless of which of these 4 target groups you might represent. You can connect with others in the same boat, or if you're a researcher, connect with businesses, entrepreneurs. This also includes startups, which is not written there. And the EURAXESS portal you're welcome to create a profile. I would highly recommend it. I highly recommend adding your CV as well. There's a standardized European format called EURAXESS, which the website will help you jump you to an official commission website to make that. And that's a great way to be seen and to also find others with really deep search tools. So some really brief info on the EURAXESS portal. These stats are accurate as of yesterday. They're constantly changing. Registered researchers, just over 27,000. And I've seen the number be higher, I've seen the number be lower. So I know this does get sort of cleaned at different points in time. So it's safe to say those 27,000 are quite fresh and updated. Inactive profiles after a certain amount of time will be removed. Those that have included their CV or the resume is only a small percentage of that. So I would say to really have more eyes on you as a candidate for whatever research job, add your CV. It will take a little bit of time to fill in the EURAXESS format, but that way it's standardized and it's there. And then in addition to that, the registered organizations that are either hiring or looking to make connections, over 17,000 there. So these are really great opportunities. I would say the benefit comes not in spending a lot of time on the portal in any single given day, but rather getting familiar with it and then checking it frequently. You can also set email alerts for job opportunities and things like that, so that you can more passively have matches come to you. So continuing some of the numbers, there are nearly 600 EURAXESS centers that are all throughout Europe. Currently over 9,000 positions. You may see what look like discrepancies in the website sometimes. For example, if you check the current job listing and you just filter for everything, you'll see that there's about 5,000 or 6,000 job offers. An offer can contain multiple positions, obviously. So when I say positions, this is what it is. It always ebbs and flows. It's updated live. This plugs into 5 or 6 or 7 private European job boards through agreements. So in addition to having all of the mandated funding opportunities and jobs that for any university or organization that receives European Commission funding, all private organizations also decide to register. And then even the ones that might not know about this portal, if they have them on their job boards, we plug into many of those. I know off the top of my head, there's one in Germany and one in Denmark that are in English language, but that we plug into. So you can come to us and sort of use it as your primary or main or only research searching tool and find a lot of opportunities there. The filters are really rich, so I'll dig into that briefly here. So under jobs and funding, which is circled here, that's our bread and butter. You'll see you can enter keywords, but in addition to that, filter certain research fields, profile, which would be sort of your research level as defined by the European Commission, different sectors, and then different host countries, if you know which country or countries you'd like to be in. And then finally, what's sort of highlighted in blue here is European Research Program. So if you want it to be under the guise of certain funding programs, like ERC grants or Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions fellowships. So there are thousands of daily listings. I was really surprised when I first came across it that really the numbers update frequently. They're sort of live. They're checked for quality control, so you don't have to worry about sort of malicious postings or people trying to steal your data. So there is a good layer of quality control there. So these daily listings are on research jobs, fellowships, and funding offers in Europe from the Commission's Horizon 2020 framework program, which is ending this year, and then the upcoming Horizon Europe framework program, which will start next year. This also includes funding from the member states themselves at the national level, and then positions at universities and other organizations if they've registered to share their opportunities, which many have. And then, as I also mentioned before, there's a hosting database to find a research host in Europe. And I think some of the questions in the upcoming Q&A do address those hosting letters and things like that. So the EURAXESS website will be a great tool to help you in the overall process of applying for one of your ERC grants. So we support you throughout the process of your career development, whether it's engaging with academia or industry through our career development centers. Online, there's a lot of training tools, sort of quizzes to help you understand what some next steps could be, useful information. There's a lot more to come. I'll jump now to partnering. So if you do register an account on that final tab, which is called My EURAXESS, you'll be able to use the partnering tool and upload your CV and your information to help people find you and find them. So you'll be able to search for individuals and those research organizations, businesses, SMEs, and startups. And regardless of what criteria you meet, you'll be able to search for CVs. So sort of that rich biographical data, that personal data from others to help find partners or hire people. In terms of information and assistance, you can receive personalized assistance through the national portals that I mentioned earlier that will have country-specific information. This is really useful if you have an idea of the country or a couple countries that you're interested in that you'd like to move in. I would say most research at the high level tends to be in English, and oftentimes or sometimes in also the language of the host country or the home country. But in this case, is English speakers, you really do have the entire world or the entire continent at your fingertips. So contact in English or the host language the national portal of the country you're interested in, and they will provide you a lot of personalized information on the university landscape, the research landscape in that country, and then a lot of those logistical questions you might have, like I was saying before, about Social Security, family matters, since you'll be coming with your family, and this support will be useful whether you want to pursue your research career in Europe or simply looking for partners in Europe and you want to stay put wherever you are. So the newest national portal, here are the 41 national portals online added this year, is Armenia. So this is countries that choose to opt in to ERA and or to add a EURAXESS portal so that they can help support their country's presence with European research. So there's now 41 countries in the region, and as you can see, this is EU member states and associated countries that are represented. And then, at least for the remainder of the year, the United Kingdom remains in Horizon 2020. These framework programs that the Commission runs for research and innovation run 7 years, and 2020 is the final year of Horizon 2020, hence the name. So Horizon Europe will begin next year. Certain details remain to be seen regarding funding levels and certain programs, and as a factor of sort of post-Brexit negotiations, the involvement or presence of the UK remains a topic that we do not necessarily have complete or full information on quite yet. So there will be developments in that. We'll be happy to take your questions, but for the time being, at least through December 31st, the UK is a standard and full member of ERA with its EURAXESS national portal. So I mentioned those 18 different topics that are under 3 overarching categories of living in Europe, working in Europe, and leaving Europe. You can quickly glance at these here. These are all on the national portal, the EURAXESS national portal of each country, and also this will be recorded, so you can find this video starting tomorrow to quickly glance at each one in depth and then ask the national portal those specific questions. Like I said, membership is primarily through our mailing list, so hop on the EURAXESS North America website. We'll be adding you if you selected yes, you'd like to join when you registered for this webinar. You'll get flash notes, which are twice a month. They provide a lot of news about the Commission and European funding in general, specific funding opportunities, and then events, which for the last several months have been virtual, so other webinars that you can join. So then a quick summary of what we do and how. You can see here the 3 main tools we do. How do we link researchers in North America to Europe? We do it through our events. We do it through the initiative of the European scientific diasporas in North America, which I mentioned previously, and connecting these European researchers in the US and Canada to counterparts, to colleagues, to other institutions, and connecting you to them as well. We have quarterly newsletters in which we feature specific European countries' research landscapes, which can give you a great idea if you're not quite sure where you want to go or you just want to do a deep dive anywhere. In terms of how we share information on European funding opportunities, we do it through our flash notes, which are twice monthly emails that we send when you sign up for our mailing list. We put them on our website, and then we publish them frequently on social media. This includes ERC grants, Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, fellowships, the national funding of European Union member states and associated countries, and then just university openings, regardless of funding source, et cetera, et cetera. So send us an email. Our email will be in the next slide, or just register for our mailing list on the portal. That's how you can sort of keep checking the heartbeat of all your EURAXESS services and keep your ear to the ground. And then in terms of your career development, how do we do that? We do hands-on sessions on grant and fellowship writing, mentoring, science communication, publishing, peer review, to give a few examples of what several colleagues are doing, and some things that are on our plate for the rest of the year and for early next year. How to transition from academia to industry, how to brand yourself as a researcher, so some of these soft skills that will be really important for some career growth. And then things like social and digital media platforms, concepts like science to society, science diplomacy, et cetera. So I did sort of have a call to ask you to reach out with your feedback. What do you want to hear? How can we support you? Regardless of your field, if you're a researcher based in the US or Canada, we want to help meet those goals and meet those needs. So just send us an email and let us know. Again, this is our contact information, our functional inbox, which my colleague and I share. We'll be able to this will reach both of us and we will respond to you directly. But this way, you're always making sure you're reaching us briefly. I'll just mention my colleague again. So Dr. Daria Buitimir Karajan, she and I are at your service. So send us an email. Like I've mentioned, you will get a follow-up email sent about 24 hours from now with the video recording from today and then the 2 ERC presentations, so you can reference those. And I'll give one last reiteration of the usefulness of our mailing list. So please sign up and also follow us on our social media channels, since we publish a lot of opportunities there. So with that, thank you for listening to my EURAXESS presentation. I tried to keep it brief, but I think there's really so much we do that I certainly thank you for your time. So with this, I'll stop sharing my screen in a moment. I'll invite the speakers to turn on their webcams and their mics. We had a very small number of questions submitted during registration. So I want to make sure, I'm just going to ask Frank to jump right into this one. What is the European equivalent of the Institutional Review Board? And what do I need to keep in mind about the reviewing of my research on an ERC grant?
Thank you, Jackson. And we had discussed this question a little bit beforehand, because I needed some translation understanding what an institutional review board is. But Jackson explains to me that this has to do with ethics and the ethics implication of research. I can tell you that there is a specific section, part of the ERC evaluation is actually separate from the scientific evaluation, that deals solely with ethics and all aspects that are concerned in applications with regard to an ethics domain. So that would be our equivalent.
Okay, great. I'll jump into one final question submitted during registration, and then from there we can just read live. All 3 of us speakers have access to the questions that the audience has been submitting, so we'll try to answer as much as time allows for. So the other question submitted earlier was from someone who says, I am preparing an ERC starting grant application. I wish to locate one of my researchers in Brazil and the other in Tanzania, both in academic institutions. What evidence to justify this, and will the partner institution's capacity/support be necessary?
Okay, Jackson, I'm going to take this one as we had prepared it. So it will be similar to a normal participation in ERC grants. It would be a host institution letter, where the host institution, the university outside of Europe, basically explains that they or confirms that they will support the researcher in the execution of the tasks foreseen in the grant. They're basically their contribution, their part. So this will be formalized, and but apart from that, nothing more is needed. These institutions, they will be included in the grant agreement as an additional beneficiary, and it's standard practice, and yeah, well rehearsed in ERC grants.
Okay, great. So with that, I mentioned Davide and Frank, you both have access to the questions as they're coming in. So, and I think it looks like we've been trying to answer via a written response many of the questions here. So I would invite you to either maybe read out loud and address some of the questions that we haven't given a written response to, or just for the audience benefit, some of these questions apply to everyone, or useful knowledge and information to everyone. If you'd just like to read some of the responses you've been sharing live during the last few minutes with everyone else.
Okay, Jackson, do you want me to take a few questions as I read them here?
Yeah, that works. I'll actually, there's maybe a couple quick ones that I can read that I think people will be eager to know. And I think Frank and Davide, you've both been answering some of these. So one viewer asks, can research team members other than IP enter Europe during the research? The answer there is a simple yes. I'm not sure if that requires any elaboration, but that's good to know.
Yeah, well, that's really clear. Yeah.
Okay. And then for someone asks, he says, he did his PhD in 2020. Would the next starting ERC call be open to him? And I think from there you explain why not. Could you just give a little bit of elaboration on that?
Yes, so it's good because I think several questions were actually in regard to this eligibility window. And as I explained in the presentation, it's 2 to 7 years past the PhD that you can apply. And the important thing to note is that the cutoff date is the 1st of January of the call year. So if the call is published in March 2019, it's the 1st of January 2019. That is the cutoff date. And then you have to calculate 2 to 7 years back from that date. And if your PhD date falls into that time zone, then you're eligible to apply for the grant. There was another related question on that. How do children come in? Is the eligibility window extended due to childbirth? And the answer is yes, it is extended per birth. It's 18 months that the eligibility window is extended. But the childbirth has to happen after PhD, because that was another follow-up question. Is it also during PhD? No, everything starts for ERC grants after the PhD. Davide, you correct me if I'm wrong here, right? I speak under your control.
Yes, sorry. Yes, no, I totally agree with what you said. I don't have anything particular to add. I just see that there is a question that pop up for me, and I will reply to that quickly. And then I'm sorry, I apologize. I have to leave. Does a visitor have to submit a proposal through NSF to participate to the implementing arrangement, or is everything done from ERC PI side? Yes, basically you will receive dear colleague letters where the NSF will advertise the launch of the call. They will actually provide you a list of ERC grantees participating. When and if you will find an ERC grantees that you really would like to participate with, you can contact him directly. He will be happy to hear from you and to find an agreement to basically arrange a visit. After that, he will have to provide you a support letter together with the support letter of the host institution. At that point, you will have to go through a selection process that the NSF will actually organize. This is how it is working, and those are more or less the steps you have to go through. But please do not hesitate to contact us if you need more information.
Under other circumstances, Davide, I would ask you to stay longer, but I'll share with the audience that you actually, so most of the EURAXESS hubs, I think a majority of the 8 of us, yesterday and today are giving presentations on the ERC grants, and Davide is speaking about the implementing arrangements in each one. So you came right in time after giving a previous EURAXESS hub talk, and you have another one to go to. So I'll just thank you so much for being here. Frank, if you have time for a few more questions, I would invite you to continue to read some of the responses you've just been sharing with the written responses, and then addressing any new ones that come in that we haven't answered yet. So thank you again, Davide. And
thank you very much.
Best wishes for your next presentation in a few minutes,
thank
I think.
You. Yes, thank you. Bye.
And that's an important one. Are there any high priority areas in frontier research that are more suitable for ERC research proposals? There I said, no, this is absolutely not the case. There are no priorities with ERC in terms of topic. All that matters is that the proposal is original, that it's daring, that it has ambition. At the same time, you have to, of course, demonstrate that you have the credentials to implement a project, and that you have a feasible research plan, a feasible scientific approach in our lingo, to basically answer your scientific question and to pull off, as it were, this very ambitious project. I move further down the list. First question from Joya. Only synergy grants can have outside ERA, so European Research Area collaborators, so collaborators from outside of the EU. That is correct. It's one outside EU AC participant per synergy grant, and only in synergy grant. That doesn't. That is not possible for the other grants, starting consolidator and advanced grant. And just for clarity's sake, you can have collaborators, but they are not fully funded by the grant. So second question, is it possible to stay more than 50% of the time at the host institution with an ERC grant? Yes, of course. The 50% is only the minimum time commitment that ERC asks of you as a researcher to devote a critical amount of time to your grant. And so it's really the minimum. You can spend 100% of your time. Important to note also that you can apply for your full salary if you so wish. This is all fine, and yeah, so more than 50% is possible. Being an EU citizen but affiliated with North American affiliation, is it feasible to apply for an ERC grant? Well, if you have a North American host institution, and you want to keep that one, you don't want to come to the EU or associated countries host institution, the only way, as explained, is to participate in a synergy group that applies. But the whole idea, of course, is to attract talent to Europe, the brightest minds, as it were. And so we would like to see you in the EU or associated countries. So
thank you for answering those questions, and I hope you'll continue in a moment. I want to go back to a previous question. Someone asked about success rates of applicants from North America compared to other applications within the EU. This makes me think, maybe I'm sort of guessing here what the person might be getting at. Are there any sort of quotas on either nationality, accepted nationalities, or regions, countries from which the applications are submitted? Or is that not considered as a factor?
Yeah, Jackson, the answer is very clear. Absolutely not. Again, the only thing that matters for ERC in the evaluation of these grants is the scientific quality. It has to be top research. It has to be a brilliant idea, and everything else, nationality, current place of residence, all these factors, the topic, it does not matter. There are no priorities. What matters is that it's a great project, a great PI, a great principal investigator, and that this person has a PhD, is willing to come to Europe or associated country for more than 50% of their time in the starting grant. It goes a little bit down for the consolidator and advanced grant in the percentage, but you have to spend time in Europe to implement the project in Europe. That's the idea, but no other restrictions apply. It's really, as I said in the beginning of my presentation, very open deliberately to attract as many talented researchers as possible.
Okay. Following the questions in order where you left off, someone asks what the role of the host institute or host institution is in writing the grant application. I know you discussed the hosting letter, the so-called hosting letter. In terms of the application itself, is that fully on the applicant?
So when it comes to the scientific part, that's absolutely on the applicant. Of course, we want the idea of the researchers. What does happen sometimes, and that is pretty standard, I suppose, is support in terms of budget, how to design a budget, and finance aspects, and the whole administrative section where a host institution can be very helpful. But the preparation of the application, that's really with the individual researcher to put that down. When it then comes, I might add, later to the application process, we know very well that, for example, for the interview stage that I was mentioning, then some host institutions offer interview training, and they do mock panels that mirror the ERC or should mirror the ERC experience to give a thorough testing for the applicants, which is helpful. But this is optional. Not everyone does it, but some do.
Okay, great. Someone asked a question about having a European nationality but current residency in Canada, and can this person apply with a Canadian institution? I think you addressed that question from someone who asked similarly with an American institution. So I'll mark that as answered. I love this next question. Someone says they're not fully understanding of the structure of the ERC, so they want to ask a basic question, which will be a great foundation. Do the ERC panels in each of the subfields have their own set of guidelines, or just additional resources relevant to that subfield? So I think in your presentation, you had the slide of all the different, the three overarching categories, and then the different subfields.
Indeed. That's a great question. Allows me to reiterate the point. that ERC applies the same rules, the same criteria of evaluation across all of our domains, all of our 3 domains, all of our 27 evaluation panels. So these groups of eminent researchers from around the world, 10 to 16 per panel, and they apply the same rules. And these rules are laid down, and this is really a top recommendation to all the participants of this webinar. Please go and have a look at the ERC work program. It's a wonderful resource. Everything is explained in great detail there, how the evaluation works and how these panels come together. And it's the same set of rules. We want equal treatment for all of our applicants. This is one of the highest goods that we have, and we work very hard. It's of course understood that if you depict the whole area of science, that when you are applying in the chemistry panel, other signs of merits might apply than if you apply to a history panel, let's say, for example. There are other publication types that might be relevant. Historians prefer books, perhaps, whereas in chemistry, it's still scientific articles that are the currency that the panel members will look at. But of course, coming from your field of study, you know what counts in the area. And this goes also back to my recommendation from the presentation is calibrate yourself, try to find what have others done, what have ERC grantees produced, written, can I compete, how do I fare against them? This is really a first grade exercise to do. So I'm reading now Abdullah's question. Says, Frank, I finished my PhD in microbiology before 15 years and I work in different institutes. There is any possibility to get this fund and which one is suitable for me? So 15 years after your PhD, you would clearly qualify for an advanced grant. So that's the simple answer to that. It's 12 years past the PhD. This brings you in the advanced grant bracket. I move on. Mark asks here, sometimes our best ideas involve research topics that are tangential to our training and past research experience. Is ERC also looking for high risk, high gain in terms of broadening a researcher's area of expertise, or should we stick to our new best ideas within what we're already good at? That's an incredibly important question, and also not entirely trivial to answer. On the one hand, the ERC, as I said, wants innovation, wants ambition, and this should always be your guiding, basically your yardstick. However, your idea also has to be balanced against feasibility. And if you have never worked at all in a given field that you're planning to move in on, I would advise, it's just personal advice that I have for you, I would advise to work a little bit in that area to get some credentials going so that the panel can also see, this is fine, Mark has some initial experience. Another component of moving into a new research area is to look at your team, to complement your skills with technical skills perhaps that your team might bring to the mix here. And yeah, so this is what I would say. Please be adventurous, please be daring, but also keep feasibility in mind. I would say this is the answer to that one. Shall I continue, Jackson?
Yeah, I think just given the length, we sort of promised people this would be an hour, and we all had so much to say that I think maybe the last question is quite great. The next question is quite great because it's related to the pandemic and sort of it's a very topical question. And then for the remaining questions that have come in the last few minutes, what I'll do is I'll make a note of these and try to follow up. I'll ask you just to send an email to northamerica@EURAXESS.net so that I can have that as a reminder and then reach out to you directly. But I'll just read this out loud. Someone asks, is it possible to get an extension to the 7 years after the PhD timing based on COVID-related lockdowns, considering that the lockdown was more extensive at many US institutes compared to European institutes? And I'm not sure if a policy has really been implemented for this, but certainly something that affects a lot of researchers.
Yeah, that's a very good question. But the answer is that we do not have a policy yet formulated on this. I'm sure this will come, but at this point, we do not have it yet.
Well, as you said, you shared proposed or anticipated call opening and closing dates in your presentation, but that hasn't been finalized yet. So I would encourage people to stick to keep looking at the EURAXESS North America website as a resource, but then certainly bookmark and check frequently the ERC website and social media as those developments happen and those dates get finalized in the coming months. So I would thank everyone. The few questions that remain unanswered, I'll follow up with, and please send me an email as well so that we can mutually be in touch. Frank, thank you so much for your time and your presentation. With your permission, I will be sharing your presentation on our website, so everything will be updated by tomorrow. So to all the attendees, please just check your email. You'll get an automated email from the GoToWebinar platform with a link to the event website, the event web page, which you registered on in the first place. And then from there, you'll be able to view this recording in full, see the presentations, and then email us with any additional questions you have. So again, Frank, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the audience. We hope we can be with you in your journey as you apply to ERC grants and just be in touch in general about European funding opportunities. So have a great late afternoon, evening to those of you further ahead of us in time zones, and a good morning to those who are here in the US with me. Great. Take care and thank you.